Hey everybody, welcome to tonight's show. We're going to be discussing transhumanism, essentially modifying our bodies, part human, part robotic, part machine, in an effort to try to extend our lifespan, reduce illness, cure disease. Is this ethical? Is this something we should be looking at? It's already happening. So we're going to basically blur the line a little bit on what it means to be human. All that and more on today's episode of Quantum Ladder Podcast. Welcome back to Quantum Ladder Podcast. My name is Louis Borges. Joining me as always, my good friend and co-host, Marquise Williams.
What's up, everybody? This is going to be a very interesting, exploration into like the possibilities of human potential, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we have the history books of what evolution has looked like up until this point. We're trying to sort of pontificate about what the next 100 or 1,000 years would look like. What are we doing? Are we going to change? A lot of experiments are already happening. There's a lot of things that some people have heard about already. So we're going to give you a little bit of a deeper understanding. And, there's ethical and moral consequences with a lot of this stuff too. Some people totally disagree with it. Other people say, hey, if it extends our lifespans and, our ability to function and live longer and healthier lives, and it's a good thing. We'll get everybody's take on that as well. But first, welcome everybody in the chat room and everybody listening on the world of YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and the UNX Network. And today's episode is sponsored by our good friends at H2 Water Expert. For all of your water filtration and hydrogen therapy needs, check out h2waterexpert.com or click the link in the description. And I know you've been drinking your water, Marquise, because you're feeling good today.
I feel good every day.
Yeah.
We're like, I'm telling you, man, I feel like a dramatic change in my life since I started drinking that water, using the system.
I got COVID about, 2 years ago. And I definitely noticed podcasting before that was easier for me. I could just sort of think of things on the fly. After I got COVID, I really noticed the brain fog. And only when doing a show, I found that if I wasn't really focused on what I was about to say, I could forget what I was going to say, even just mid-sentence. And that was very unlike me. And all that is gone. I mean, I definitely feel like my old self. I don't know if that's just time or if the sort of antioxidant properties of this hydrogen water is helping. But either way, I feel good too. So, it makes for a more enjoyable life, right? When you're not tired, you're not always dragged down and you're not feeling crappy. You just enjoy things better. Stuff doesn't bother you as much. And knowing that we're doing something proactive to, benefit ourselves long term. Maybe we don't develop Alzheimer's or something like that as a result, or cardiovascular issues. So, I love the magic that it's just water. It's just it's just splitting water, and that is the medicine in itself. And I think that that's super cool. So today's show is about transhumanism. I know this is a topic near and dear to your heart. It kind of brings in the worlds of AI, robotics, sentience, ethics, and everything else. So let's get started with a clip exactly on what is transhumanism, and then we can go down the rabbit hole.
Transhumanism is a movement devoted to merging human and machine with the goal of enhancing longevity and cognitive abilities. A seemingly noble goal, but raises a host of ethical problems when it comes down to who controls the machine part of you. From Elon Musk's Neuralink to Sam Altman's WorldCoin, Silicon Valley CEOs are building empires based on centralization of power that now extends to our biology. Immunity passports regulating cross-border travel and commerce, WorldCoin's eyeball scans claiming to overcome fraud, all adding personal data aspire to a closed, centrally managed ecosystem authorizing human activity based on a few decision makers, cloaking their intent with language such as tools for humanity, world, and a .org website does not mean these projects are inclusive or decentralized by any means. The narrative shared with mainstream media rarely reflects the true motives of these companies, which is all about data and control. And if past behavior is any indication of the future, the metrics that matter most for these companies are growth and profit, not privacy, freedom, and well-being of humanity.
So I've got thoughts, of course. Now, I want to give everybody, I kind of want to preface what I'm going to say throughout this. I'm going to do a lot of like speculation. I'm going to talk a lot about sci-fi because for me, when it comes to the potential of transhumanism specifically, it's all in sci-fi. Everything that you can imagine about transhumanism is in sci-fi. The perfect representation of what's possible for humanity, if we were to ever truly step into the transhumanist, way of being, it is in sci-fi, 100%. So one movie or one franchise that I really liked when I was a kid, especially, was Ghost in the Shell. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially, well, think about it like this. Picture that there's a future where, cybernetic enhancements are technically, they're just normal. Everyone has them. They're the foundation of society. So there's this guy, there's a protagonist, the main character's name's Motoko Kusanagi. He's a cyborg. And I know you're thinking in your head, like a cyborg is a violent, aggressive war machine, but that's not exactly how it is. They of course try to emphasize for the sake of entertainment, the violent aspect of it, but there's more to it than that. So they use these cybernetic enhancements that enhance your cognition. They enhance people's physical characteristics, so your physical performance. They make you more reactive. They make your reflexes better. They make you stronger. They give you abilities through like extensions of your body, like weapon systems and so forth. So yes, they do emphasize it in the movie, but they also emphasize a lot of the cognition. So being able to scan your environment and see what's around you, being able to connect with other people cybernetically and transmit information between you and encrypt the information in your mind through a chipset, which we'll talk about Neuralink later on. That kind of talks about how that's possible now, but we'll get there. It's awesome, and it's again another representation, at least the first representation today, of transhumanism. So that's what I wanted to start off with you.
Yeah, and we briefly touched on this before when we did our CRISPR and Neuralink episode. We talked about guys like Josiah Zayner on the left here. Biohackers is, they're most affectionately referred to term. But essentially, I mean, look at the camera implant in the eye, or LED sensors, or, like electronics and modes of payment, identification, even guys doing CRISPR gene editing on themselves to enhance their whatever. It
Yeah.
can go horribly wrong. I mean, he's a pretty smart guy, and he's never injected himself with anything that would kill him. Obviously, he's still alive, but essentially he's an advocate for, we own our bodies. Nobody can tell us what we can do to them. If we want to have cameras in our eyes, or if we want to genetically modify ourselves to be bigger, stronger, more intelligent, then that is our freedom to do that. A lot of other people are saying this can get severely out of hand, and we simply don't know what the ramifications of this gone wrong could be, especially when it comes to things like modifying our DNA. If we disrupt that main basis of DNA, and it gets in sort of the sperm line of things, it's in there forever. If you modify yourself, it ends with you. You don't pass that on when you reproduce, but editing the germline, as it's known, which is anything that gets passed on through genetic traits, effectively, if you do something bad, you can't get rid of that. It's now in the population forever. So, and again, these are not people that are doing this on a commercial scale. These are people messing with it on their own. Although I would argue some of them know as much or more than the people who are in the medical world, because they're extreme enthusiasts about this stuff. But, you cross that ethical boundary, and that first video clip talked about WorldCoin, essentially your retina being your mode of recognition for everything, for payments and for your identification. It would just be in your eye, which is unique to only you. But then again, who makes the decisions? What if you don't want to do that? I mean, look at how the world reacted to a mandatory vaccine. Everybody was split, right? So people don't want to be told what they have to do. But essentially, if we go to a world like this, we could be controlled, right? Somebody is essentially in power of, do we get to participate or not? If we don't have these devices included in our body, we're now excluded. Can they spy on us with them? Can they control us with them? We'll talk about Neuralink, but essentially a
Yeah.
computer chip in your brain. I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about this topic, to be honest.
Let,
I think it's cool
well,
from the point of view of expanding our lifespan. I mean, 2000 years ago, we didn't have medicine the way we do
right.
now. So was it unethical to save babies' lives because we know how to now? No, I think that's just human evolving to the point where we learned something. Now we're using it for beneficial purposes. But you could argue that any medicine is messing with nature. If we're supposed to have a 25-year lifespan, then let it be, is what some people would say. Whereas others would say, hey, if I'm a scientist and you can prolong my life for, let's say up to 200 years, I now have 100 years of peak prime life that I can do the work. And imagine if Einstein lived to be 200, or
Right.
Tesla, how much more could they have discovered in their time here on Earth? And a lot of this stuff doesn't get passed on to the next generation. It kind of just dies when they do, right? So would there be benefits of us living longer lives? Would it worsen or would it improve? How would we behave if we knew that we didn't just have an 80-year lifespan, but maybe a 280-year lifespan? Would that make us better or worse people? I mean, your brain kind of goes crazy thinking about this stuff. But no matter what your opinion is, this is happening. Even with things like organs, is it ethical to give somebody a bionic kidney to keep them alive? I would argue yes. But is it ethical to give somebody all bionic organs to outcompete somebody who's just a
Yeah.
normal human being? Maybe that's not ethical, right? It's almost like what you use this for determines whether it's ethical or not. And again, that's just one person's opinion, and everybody has one. So I don't really know where I stand with this. I think it's cool. I also think it's terrifying, and
Yeah.
time will tell, right?
Let me add some, because I've, oh my gosh, this is probably, I'm gonna have to contain myself. So just check me every now and then if I get too. I feel like the years and years of like sci-fi, fantasy, novels and video games and movies and TV series have like, this is the time where it's relevant. There is so the idea that you can download your memories is an idea that has been talked about like today, a real idea that's been talked about, where if you were to, for example, pass on, and this is without the life extension for the time being, then all your memories could be downloaded and stored on a device that's inside of your eye that essentially views everything that you do and records everything, send it to an internet, like a cloud service that will be able to eventually recreate you so that your family can see and talk to you again. There's a Black Mirror episode about it. You'll have to check out the TV series Black Mirror. There are a lot of ideas that are in there that are sci-fi, but relevant to potentials of our future of humanity. And that's one of them. So it's a really cool idea for, again, you've lost a child, and that child has recorded all their memories. Imagine if you could continue to speak to that child and to see them indefinitely until you pass. Some people might think that's extremely creepy, but to those who want to see, just have one more conversation, see them laugh or play, that's an idea that they would die for. And so there will be controversy, there will be conflict between people who believe it's okay and it's not. But I think ultimately it's like COVID. I think the larger majority of people will probably be in favor of it because there is a benefit that they believe outweighs the potential negative. Like AI today, where there's a loud minority that says AI is going to be bad because it could destroy us all. It's possible, but the potential for utopian futures are so great that Google and Apple and Microsoft and Nvidia specifically, they're willing to bet the future of the company of human civilization on AI because they believe that 1% chance of annihilation is worth the chance for the greater potential of a utopian future. There are a lot of ideas, and I don't want to throw them all out right now, but we'll go over them. There are also some downfalls, and don't worry, I've got lots of references for those of you who are like, your doomers on the AI and the technology and the transhumanism. I got some doomer ideas for you too, so don't worry. I got a little something for everybody.
Well, this is kind of like generational, right? If you told somebody 2 generations back that we would have devices like this one day, but yeah, they kind of track what we do and where we go and like what we look
What you
at,
say?
they would
Yeah.
say run like hell. Like that is a horrible idea. But our children who are born not knowing any different, they don't necessarily think that way. They see the potential of this could be great. The issue is we don't own these companies. We don't own the software. We don't get to decide what they do or don't do with our information. That is where the nefarious potential comes in, is who gets to decide who gets to participate in society and who doesn't. What if we could all upgrade ourselves to live 200 years, but it's $25 million to do that?
Mhm.
Only these social elites are going to be able to afford that, and the average person will never get that. Is that fair? That if you have
Yeah.
money, you could live for hundreds of years. If you don't, well, you're just going to die like everybody else. Like, does it become a society even more so than now of have versus have not? And I mean, if I was a billionaire and I had the money, I'd probably do it. But do you not think there are some people in the world that want this to be exclusive? Sort of the Illuminati mentality of things, like, well, we're better than everybody else, so why should the poor have longevity? The poor are disease. Only the elite should have longevity. So I guess I'm for this if it's equally available to everybody and it's not a monetary restriction. But there are still parts in this world without clean food or water. Like, how are they going to get bionic chips in their brains, or artificial organs to let them live longer and process diseases and things like that?
Yeah.
We can't even figure out basic needs right now, food and water. So I'm not very optimistic that this computer, human mix is going to be evenly applied to everybody. It doesn't feel like it's going to be an inclusive thing, especially with the idea of like WorldCoin and things like that,
Yeah.
your eye becomes your passport. Somebody just shuts that off. Or what if there's an error in the server somehow and you get deleted? Now you can't do anything because you're not registered on the system. Like, it just,
Right.
anytime you put in these things, there are always going to be downsides, complications. We need to think about what happens what are the fail
Yeah.
safes, right? And is
Can I
this available to everybody?
I'm gonna posit one more thing before we move to the next piece of content that we have to share with people. To your point, which is I think is probably the most important thing to think about for everybody, by the way. I think everyone should think about what you just said. There's another TV series called Altered Carbon. Man, it's such a good show. It explores a lot of philosophical implications that you're talking about right now. So in this TV show, it's quite explicit, so not PG-13 for kids, but essentially there's a group of people that discover a tree that was left behind by a non-human intelligence. All right, that's all I'll say. It's a mystery. If you saying that is ties to, it's a mystery. You won't know until you see it. And they find a way to synthesize the tree bark into a serum or some kind of a technology that can essentially extend your life after death. So you'll live, you'll die, but you'll come back. But only a certain amount of people can have that. However, everyone else, most people, live in the slums on the ground, right, on the surface of the earth, where they can also, if they can afford it, continue to live on. There are a lot of religious implications they talk about where people will not live to be more than one lifetime, but many people want to live to have multiple lifetimes until they can't afford it anymore. They keep their memories, they keep their experiences, they keep all that information, and they continue to live on after death. But in the sky, there's an entire another civilization of rich and wealthy people who essentially maintain and govern the rest of the world, and they've lived many, many lifetimes, and they can. However, it's all uploaded to a satellite. And that satellite, rich people can buy an exclusive satellite that essentially stores their information permanently. And if the satellite doesn't upload your last memories, you die. You're essentially a part of you doesn't live on. Only the part of you that was uploaded will live on. So it's a very strange and interesting idea, but it shows the divide between the rich and the poor and how most people, yeah, they do get the chance to do that if they can afford it. And there's a huge emphasis on that divide between rich and poor, the haves and have-nots, the dystopian potential for this cybernetic future, this transhumanist future, where people are able to, if they can afford it, continue on their life and get parts that they need for their body and so forth, and those that can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Utopian society is great if it's equally shared by everybody. Then that is a utopia. Everybody's happy
Right.
and there's abundance for all. that is what it needs to be. But let's just be real. Let's look at how we are right now.
That's right.
There is a possibility for a utopia. There's enough money and enough resources that we could have that, but we don't. So what I'm missing is, where is the catalyst for change? What's going to change in our morality that will allow this to be shared? I don't see that. I just see the elites with money playing these games, making these inventions up. They get to partake while people will still not have food and water. I could definitely foresee a time where, you know, the Elon Musks of the world have brain chips and synthetic organs, and they can live to be 300 years old. There's still kids in Africa without clean water. I don't see where's the drive to bring them up to our level. This is just like, hey, we're here. How do we get even higher and screw everybody else? I don't see the humanity end of it.
Yeah.
You know, anytime I think of like, well, it could be good. Yeah, but it could be good now and it's not, right? So like, what would make it any different just because we have even further technology? I don't see how that would level the playing field. I see it would just divide and spread that gap between have and have not even further.
Well, I think that, again, you're making some very good points here that I have to be honest and admit. I'm with you on that one. Unfortunately, with the world we live in, it already, I mean, you want to talk about dystopian, it may not feel like it because we can have as many different cereals as we want. But we talked about what's in our food. Those cereals are not good for you. And a lot of the foods that we eat are literally poisonous to us. So yes, people can be overweight in a very impoverished civilization, but that's because they're eating unhealthy foods that are toxic to their body. How I don't think it's a well thought out idea that, things are better than they ever have been. I think we're ignoring the reality that things appear to be better than they ever have been, but they're not. And so, to that point that you made, this is, I think, which is a great point. There probably will always be a divide. Always. Now, I will say this much: people like, I don't want to be utopian about. I want to be real. There's Mustafa Suleyman, who just got bought out by Microsoft. There's by the way, I think Microsoft is doing, Sundar Pichai. I think he has good intentions. I said, well, goodish, outwardly intentions. Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, Facebook. I think they have good intentions, at least on the outside, to democratize these technologies that can essentially level the playing field, can make life better for all of the other people, meaning us that are not rich and wealthy, to make it better for them so that even though there's a divide, we will still be able to benefit from technologies that will eventually be so cheap, like a toaster or a microwave or a big flat screen TV or a cell phone in your pocket that can essentially access all information known to humanity that you had to pay for going to a priest to tell you what to believe. Now you can just get a phone at the store and you have access to all the information. Information and knowledge has been democratized. And in the future, in the very near, actually right now, we have an online tutor. We have all kinds of resources that we can get for free, by the way, right now, with nothing but an internet connection and a device that you can, if you have to, go to the library and access that information with. But everybody can pretty much, most people, the vast majority of people can access a $40 phone or device that can access that information, highway. So I think it's just going to be more of that, more of rich people living to be older and healthier and better and having better lives. But we're going to have better lives as a consequence of the democratization of those trickle down technologies. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it makes sense. If they're the ones with the money to do the research to bring out these type of technologies, sure, they're going to benefit, but there will be tertiary benefits that we'll all have, right? Like it took one company to monopolize the cell phone world, but now we can all kind of play with that. Maybe we don't have a diamond studded iPhone, but we still got an iPhone. So yeah, even if it's not as beneficial as it would be to the elites, there could still be some blowback that we could all, enjoy. But I think the main issue is the fact that society is going to dictate sort of your ceiling. You mentioned that we have lots of choice when it comes to, we think we have choice when it comes to like, I can have as many kinds of cereal as I want, but society is also dictating where you work, what that value of that job is, what you should get paid to do that job. Multiply that out over a lifetime. There's only X amount of money you're ever going to earn doing that specific job dictated by society. So your limit is already capped. Unless something changes, you win the lottery, you improve your skill set, you take on another role. If you just keep doing the same thing, you will only reach a certain limit of attainment. And if the limit of this novel new technology of increasing lifespans and things like that, if that's outside the window of what somebody working at Kroger Pharmacy until they retire, it may never be attainable. I mean, look how it is with big pharma. We covered that, people that have debilitating diseases like spinal muscular atrophy. It's $1 million vaccine just to save your life and to preserve a quality of life where you're like a vegetable in a wheelchair. Like, that's not even a good quality of life to charge $1 million for that. And we allow that. The FDA allows that. That's fair. So I have a tough time thinking that this is ever really going to trickle down and benefit those that need it most. It's not the elites, because the elites are small in number compared to the rest of the population. They're the 1%, we're the 99%. So when kids get sick, 99% of them are regular people's kids, whereas only 1% are the elite. So it's the 99% that need this the most because we represent the bulk of the population. But if it's only going to be attainable by the 1%, it's never really going to trickle down. This isn't like talking about a phone. We're talking about enhancing ourselves biologically, cognitively, physically. You get into the world of cloning and CRISPR gene editing and enhancing designer babies. I mean, it has the propensity to get really weird and very unfair, and also has the ability to do major long-term damage that we just don't know what we're playing with. A lot of spiritual people are saying that, we're trying to play God by doing this. This wasn't how we were meant to be. But again, I mean, even if you look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, they won't allow a blood transfusion to save a baby because they don't believe that's natural, right? That's God's will. Right. The baby was meant to die. Fair point. They can, believe what they want to believe. So at some point, we either accept this as, if you are spiritual, okay, God gave you the brain to develop and now discover these new things. That in itself is a gift. Others see that as evil kind of creeping in and messing up the fabric of humanity. We've never had this for hundreds of thousands of years. Now we have it. Okay, it might seem like a benefit to us, but maybe not. Maybe a 200-year lifespan of a person, maybe that just increases the amount of pollution and strain on the planet. Maybe it prolongs things that shouldn't be prolonged, Again, what if your body lives 200 years, but your brain gets dementia after 80? Do you really want 120 years of living with dementia? Like, is that an enjoyable existence? You have to think about all the extra things of this is not going to be perfect. Although they may increase things in certain areas, maybe your body, your mind, maybe your ability to access consciousness or download things or store memories and all that, that might be great. But what does that look like in its initial stages? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want a car with, a rotting body, but the engine runs because I'm going to fall through the floor of the car. Like, I need the whole package. I need a safe car with a good engine with all the parts. A Ferrari with a missing wheel is not a Ferrari, right? So again, I'm a little bit divided on this whole thing. Yes, I think it's good. I think it's good to kind of push the envelope because that's how discoveries are made in medicine and science, is people having crazy ideas. It wasn't 1,000 years ago we thought we were the center of the universe, right? And if you argued that, you could be put to death. That's how, against this type of progress we've been. And now, like you said, we have a much better life. But is it better? What is better? Who gets to define what is better? Better for who? It's better for Sam Altman if we all have this world coin implanted in our eye. But is that better for us? And how do you know? And where's the real info on this? It's hard not to get swept up by the marketing, the hype. And we really don't know. We have to kind of take the word from these people that are doing these inventions, marketing these products. I'm sure Elon Musk will tell everybody they should have a chip in their brain. But should we? Like, who's doing the third-party testing on this stuff? Who's going to go against the Elon Musk aristocracies of the world? They're just going to get crushed, right? Do you really want to poke the hornet's nest when it comes to that stuff? So the issue is this isn't stuff that many people are working on with non-biased intentions. The only people working on it are the people investing money in it and trying to get a profit out of that. So you really have to take them at their word that this is a good thing and here's all the potential benefits. Let's not just go there. Let's think a little bit about what could be the negatives and let's get some sort of cohesion. Let's talk as populations of people rather than just a few of these elites telling us, oh, this is going to be great, this is the next big thing. How do you know what's what if it's just coming from one or two people, right?
There was an argument that's been going around. Let me think of one that we can talk about on the internet, not on Patreon. So there's an argument that's going around where there are two opposing beliefs, like freedom of speech, for example, right? There are people who are free speech absolutists, which means they think that you should be able to say anything you want to out in the public. Nobody can stop you from saying it. You should be allowed to say anything you want to. There should be no restrictions to speech in any way. There are a lot of consequences to that kind of thinking. A lot of them. First of all, harassment is probably the most obvious and evident one that would be bad as a consequence of free speech. However, on the other side of that coin is restricting speech that may be hurtful but not truly harmful. Hurtful emotionally but not harmful in any real way, any visceral way. Well, like I said, it's visceral. Any substantive way. And that means that if you say something like having this conversation about transhumanism, what if somebody was like, oh my goodness, they said something that hurt my feelings, I don't like it, and they can put us in prison? That's not good either. Mm-hmm. And so to have these two ideas in the public view, I think is of the utmost importance. Now, bringing it back to transhumanism, I think that the fact that there are people who are like, no, it's bad, which I don't agree with. It's all bad. We're all gonna die from this technology. It's gonna kill. That right there, it is important that there are people that do that. It is very, very important, because my fear is that we're given all these promises. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be the best thing. The world's gonna be better. This is what we're gonna do. This is what we want to do. We're gonna make your life so much easier. And because we've never objected and said, hey, what about the consequences? Hey, what about these safety measures? Hey, what about this? Because we've never done that. We don't even think there's no precautions. There's no measures that have been taken to prevent the potential catastrophes that can literally end human civilization. And without those two opposing ideas in public view, arguing it out, battling it out, we'd have a problem. And so to your point, I think that what you're saying doesn't even go far enough in resistance to the idea of these big corporations who are promising us all these things. However, I'm optimistic about the promises of these people simultaneously. I know this sounds like an oxymoron of thinking, but that's just how my mind works. I think it's important to oppose, but I really hope for the potential that's being promised.
Yeah, like you made a good point there, where these two factions need to battle it out in the public eye. Right now, there isn't the other faction. It's just a lot of content on social media saying this is bad. But where is the public gathering? Let's put Elon Musk and somebody who's equally brilliant on the other side. Let's put them in a stadium and let's televise it for the planet to really hear both sides of the argument and let everybody make an informed opinion. Because right now you have those, again, behind the technology telling you everything they want you to know. And even if they have good intentions, everyone has a bias. So maybe they're throwing caution to the wind because they're so focused on where the good could be with this, but they're also ignoring a lot of things that they wouldn't normally think about because they're not a skeptic. Whereas a skeptic would say, hey, you're not even thinking about this or this or this or this because you're only so focused on the goal, right? They just want to cross that finish line. They just want to get acceptance. They want this thing to gain traction, even if it is with good intent. There's no opposing side giving the spotlight for us to really get the goods on both sides of this equation. And a lot of people are forming opinions based on their upbringing, their spiritual beliefs, their lack of knowledge with this. Maybe they see the Neuralink chip in somebody's brain. They reference that with all the sci-fi movies they watch their entire life. And they're like, oh, this always ends bad when that happens. But that's really the only info that your brain has stored to form an opinion. It doesn't have the real facts. We're lying in the world of science and science fiction, and it's not all the same. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I got a professor here. Pardon me, I forget her name. She's brilliant. We've had clips from her on our show before, but where she's going to give us her thoughts, and she's teaching her class here on the idea of transhumanism. So we'll check it out.
When we talk about transhumanism, the temptation is to depict it as an exciting or frightening possible future, something which happens out there in the future or may come, but in any case, one that hasn't entirely happened yet. That's the wrong way of looking at it. In fact, transhumanism is already here. I go actually further, I think, than Elise in saying it's so well established that there's arguably no point in having this debate. To my eye, this era began in the mid-20th century, before you and I were born, with a biomedical innovation that radically changed what it is to be human in the human social order, reproductive technology. The pill was the first transhumanist technology. It set out not to fix something that was wrong with normal human physiology, in the ameliorative sense of medicine up to that point. Instead, it introduced a whole new paradigm. It set out to interrupt normal in the interests of individual freedom. At one point, Elise, in your book, Elise notes that avowed transhumanist women are rarer than men. And if I remember rightly, you postulate that this is because systems thinkers are typically more prevalent among men than women. I'd say on the contrary, the reason transhumanist women seem rare is that they're so common they don't read as transhumanists. Nearly every adult woman in the developed world has implicitly accepted the belief that full adult female personhood is structurally reliant on technologies that interrupt normal female fertility. And by the definition I opened with, that makes nearly every adult woman in the developed world a transhumanist. How's the transhumanist era going? The pill was legalized in 1960 in America, 1961 in Britain. So we have more than 6 decades worth of data on how transhumanist practice in that context measures up to transhumanist theory. What I suggest we can infer from the story so far in that instance is that trying to re-engineer our physiology, our nature, if you will, in the interests of freedom, progress, or whatever other name you give, doesn't in fact deliver utopia. Or rather it does, kind of. But it happens asymmetrically. Utopia arrives asymmetrically, depending on where you sit in the socio-economic hierarchy. And where technology is used to liberate us from the kind of givens, such as normal female fertility, that were previously managed pragmatically by social or legal norms, what replaces it isn't a human person, free from nature, but a market in which that nature becomes a set of supply and demand problems. In the case of sex, the transhumanist pill revolution didn't deliver. We got the so-called sexual marketplace, in which normative asymmetries in male and female mating preferences reappear in cartoon form as market opportunities or as strategic weaknesses to be weaponized in a contest for personal gain, or straightforwardly as commodities to buy, sell, or exploit. Meanwhile, if those at the top of the food chain are relatively well placed to thrive in this quote-unquote marketplace, those at the bottom, impoverished, racialized, trafficked, or otherwise vulnerable people, particularly women, are far more likely to become commodities themselves. I would argue further that the same logic will be likely to hold for any other embodied limit you destroy via biotech. I predict that should we find a cure for aging, for example, it won't be universally available. It will be prohibitively expensive, and it will serve primarily as a tool for further consolidating wealth and power among those who can access it. Perhaps it will require harvesting tissue from others. The fertility industry already has a thriving market for gametes, or indeed reproductive quote-unquote services, also known as renting somebody's womb. But so far it's not rich, well-connected people who sell themselves in this way, who sell parts of their body. Research is already being done into blood transfusions as an anti-aging treatment, and you can be sure that should it flourish, it won't be rich people selling their plasma. You'd have to be wildly optimistic to think we can blithely marketize ever greater swathes of our embodied selves without opening new vistas for class asymmetry and exploitation. And it makes no sense to argue that we will stay well protected against such risks by moral safeguards. At least not within a transhumanist paradigm, because transhumanism itself requires an all-out assault on the humanist anthropology that underpins those moral safeguards. You can't have transhumanism without throwing out humanism. Here I do quote directly from you. If people are just ape-brained meat sacks, and we're urgently in need of upgrading our ape-brained meat sacks, what possible reason could we have for objecting to a market in human organs, or infanticide, or genetically engineering the masses to be more docile? All of these are only repellent when you hold them against a humanist anthropology. So if you're assaulting that anthropology in the name of humanist values, upgrading us so in the name of compassion or kindness or freedom or lives lived in greater dignity, I submit that the project is unlikely to work out the way you think it will. So in sum, we're already well into the transhumanist era, but the story so far suggests that far from delivering utopia, what it mostly delivers is a commodification of the human body that disproportionately benefits those who already have power and privilege. I don't think we can put this back in its box, but to my eye, the proper response to this era is not stamping our foot on the accelerator, but a twofold resistance, or perhaps even just a twofold note of caution. Firstly, in retaining a humanist anthropology, in defiance of all those currently sawing away at the branch we're sitting on. And secondly, in mounting a vigorous defence of those without power, now increasingly at the sharp end of biotech's unacknowledged class politics. Thank you.
So we found the lady who needs to be in the stadium with Elon to debate this.
Yeah.
I agree with a lot of what she says. I have the same... I'm not as pessimistic about that. Like we need to, aberrantly, slam on the brakes. because we've already been playing with this, right? She's absolutely right. The pill is a transhumanist device. It is changing the natural course of anthropology, deciding when we will reproduce, when we will not. We are already playing God in that sense. We've just been doing it for 6 decades now. We think it's no big deal. But we literally need to look at that as the basis for all of this, because everything has come out of that, right? At first, people, violently oppose birth control. It's not right. It's against God's will. Then people start realizing, hey, for population and things like that, this is good. And also, delaying these decisions allow people to become better parents instead of having children at a younger age or things like that. So we're okay with that now because enough time has passed. Now we're looking at, images of people with cameras in their eyes and things like that. And we're like, that is ludicrous. No way. Really? How different is this than birth control? We are just playing with what the natural machine is and enhancing it, changing it, making it preferential. But I share her sentiments on the fact that it is unlikely to benefit those at the lower end of the money scale. This will just continue to be that same divide of have versus have not. Like she said, there aren't rich people donating plasma. It's the people with no money donating plasma, organs, all these things. In India, there's the largest population of people missing a kidney in the world. People are literally selling kidneys, sometimes under dissuasion, not realizing that, hey, you're 20, you're not going to live a full life if you only have one kidney. But, they get into these loans where they're generational, that you may be paying a debt from your grandfather. And what other way is there out? So they see it as almost like a martyr, where if I can do this small thing, I can help my family. Maybe somebody else can carry that torch and not be sort of bonded by these shackles of debt or other things. And it starts getting to be pretty sad, right? With, the people that have the ability to play and those that have to sort of be victim to that just to survive, like that becomes a market in itself. So I know you've got a lot of thoughts on what she said. I could see you reacting while she was talking. What do you think?
First of all, listen, I don't normally curse, but damn, she is master. That woman was that was powerful. First of all,
she's a boss.
She was on. That was fantastic. I'm salivating over that talk that she gave. So, okay, where do I begin? The first thing I want to say is her idea of the commodification of the human body. I'm bothered by that comment because I think it is a very doomer kind of like, there's a very pessimistic view of what she's calling transhumanism. I think that first of all, I think she's not wrong, by the way. I just think that the way that when she's applying that to what's happening now, I think there's a disconnect between that. I think that maybe one day there will be a commodification of the human body, in a sense, when we can do things like fully replace organs, and so forth. Right now, it's more about commodities, like things that we use outside of ourselves that improve the quality of our life. They have essentially gotten better over time for the poor, but even more so for the rich. The rich do things like they're able to do things like get away from technology and go to the beach for a week, go on a vacation to a remote island for a month, spend 2 months in Hawaii just to meet people and interact and just do whatever. That's the kind of stuff that they can do that brings them to to a more humanistic enjoyment of life, where they're able to do things that enrich their life, their quality of life, truly enrich their quality of life. They're not actually putting on bionic suits and replacing their arm for bionic arm parts to make themselves stronger, or they're not doing that. They're doing things that bring them closer to their humanity. They're able to do things that bring them closer to their humanity. So I worry about this idea that the push for this technological revolutions, that what we're doing is we're going to continue to create that divide in a way that not only continues the rich and the poor divide, but doesn't allow us to close that gap, or at least raise the ceiling. They'll always be higher than us, but at least we'll still be improving. I worry about that with conversations like she just had. And the other thing is like the idea of companionship. I don't remember now off the top of my head, there was a study that was done, and it's been done several times over the course of this last decade, where the loneliness in men and especially in America, is a genuine problem. The loneliness and mental illness and depression in men has been overlooked. And so even though I don't experience this stuff, there are a lot of men that do. And there was a guy, this is controversial, so please excuse me if this is sensitive for you. But there was a guy who went into a massage parlor. He was, paying for services, extra services, and he slaughtered people in that massage parlor. Slaughtered them. Now imagine that they were bionic, or they were androids, robots or whatever, that were lifelike. They had artificially intelligent, brains and thinking. They could essentially adopt whatever behavior that you want, and they could personalize the experience to a guy. Now listen, that's, to me, I'm not really into that, but there are literally millions of men who that's all they have. They don't have the time or the energy, or even sometimes they don't have the ability, the mental ability to do that, to love someone, or to be the kind of guy that a girl wants, quote unquote, girl wants in society. That could be essential to potentially eliminating what people say now are some of the greatest threats to America, which is domestic terrorism in schools. They literally talk about, and I'm not saying that kids should be into this stuff, but like they talk about men who are their sadness is leading them to extremism and violence and really bad ideas that are not just bad, like, oh, it's not good they're just like controversial, but I mean genuinely bad for society. They could cause harm, real physical harm to people. If you could eliminate that by, if you will, creating a brothel for artificially intelligent robots all over the nation for men who can't get, they can't do it.
So sex robots are the cure to all our problems? Is that what you're saying right now?
Yes.
Okay.
For some people, yes. I think that companionship is the most important thing that people are lacking right now. Feeling loved, feeling accepted, feeling like you're just fine the way that you are, and you don't have to be better. You can be imperfect and still be loved. Even if it's not a person, it's still something. And at some point, they'll be so indistinguishable from real people that it won't even matter to some people. Now, listen, I see you over there.
Today's
I see the
episode
plight.
sponsored by sexrobot.com.
The Japanese company coming to a city near you. I really do believe that could be beneficial. Now, if they start off with conversational AI. Now, this other thing is like making humans docile. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay. But guess what? The number one crisis in America was, I think it's number 3, actually. I think it was number 3, the opioid crisis. And maybe I'm wrong about. I feel like I gotta Google that. I think it was number 3. I just saw that there was a conversation on a news station where they said it was like a number 3 crisis in America was the opioid crisis over recent years. And that is essentially a medicine that makes you docile. It makes you feel okay, right? So we're taking medications that make us feel okay. And hey, guess what? Doctors are dishing it out like it's candy. But if you do it with the robot, oh, that's disgusting. You can't do that. Or forget about physical. What about just emotional support? What about somebody that could be there for you when your parents die? When there's when you lose someone, or when you need someone, a therapist. What if you could have a therapist for free? Because there's no cost to the company to create an AI that can just be your therapist. And at some point, they'll be so good. Again, they'll be indistinguishable from a human. You can have a real-time conversation with them one-on-one, interrupt them, get real feedback, adjust the behavior of that AI to where it's so real and lifelike and personalized for you. That could literally change society. There's no medicine necessary. So I really disagree a lot with what she said with where it's going right now. We're nowhere near the doom that she's talking about, but we could be at some point. Sorry for the diatribe.
And in the second half of our show, we're going to get into modular body parts, Neuralink, bionic limbs. We'll even show you a real life patient who currently is a sort of guinea pig for this Neuralink project, has a chip in his brain, somebody who's paralyzed, but yet can do things just with their thoughts, and they don't need their physical bodies to be active, right? I mean, if Stephen Hawking had this, he would be the happiest person on the planet, right? Because it would be like what he was able to do and then even more, right? So we're going to get into a whole bunch of stuff. We got some more images and videos when we come back. Let's refill that coffee. Tim, put some shot glasses in the chat room, brother. It's break time. We'll see you guys back here in 5. And we are back with the second half of Quantum Ladder Podcast, talking about transhumanism. What defines being a human being? Should we play with this stuff? Should we not? And, we've seen images like this, AI or otherwise, seem kind of benign. Okay, you want to put a device in your wrist or in your hands or something like that. But what if it now gets into your brain? This is legit, folks. This is happening right now. Let's talk about Neuralink. I know you're a big fan of this, Marquise. We did an episode on this. So if you love this topic, check out our Neuralink episode that we did. But yeah, now we're dealing with essentially microchips implanted in people's brains with the sort of precipice that this is good, this is beneficial. But what if it comes down to things like controlling your mood, controlling your minds? What if you could hijack somebody's brain and turn people into soldiers of your own creation, right? Like there's a lot of bad that can come from this, not just the good. So what do you think? You're sort of the Neuralink expert here.
Yes. So I wanted to make sure that I got my facts right here, because there is a guy who just recently, the first human patient to receive the Neuralink brain implant. This guy stayed up the first thing he did, was stay up all night long playing Civilization 6. Now, by the way, I love this guy. Listen, I won't get into the details of the game. The bottom line is he's awesome. However, I am genuinely concerned. So this he's 29 years old. He is a quadriplegic, and he essentially got a spinal injury during an accident about 8 years ago, and he wasn't able to do anything. So they did a lot of things that try to help him. His passion was to play video games, of course, but it took him so long to play a lot of these games that he just didn't feel like playing them. He got the first set of the first actual live testing of the Neuralink in his brain, and he stayed up all night that night playing that game. I think it was like 6 or so hours overnight. Awesome dude. Now, my concern, of course, is that what happens if now Neuralink, by the way, it essentially gives him the ability to interact with a computer using his thoughts. So he could move the video game around, select things and make decisions just by thinking about them, because he's a quadriplegic. He can't use his hands. Everything from the neck down, he can't do anything. He can't feel anything. So that was a big deal. It changed his life. Personally, I believe that this is going to be a technology that, at least initially, will be beneficial for people in his situation. People that have limited, extremely limited, or no mobility whatsoever. And in order to just have a regular, some kind of quality of life, some kind of life at all, they need to have something like Neuralink. I think it's okay. I think it is their decision. And I think that it could be helpful to them. Clearly, the first night he did, it was helpful. I obviously have my objections, one of which, the most notable, is what happens if there's an electric storm, a thunderstorm,
or what happens if you don't pay your monthly fee and they shut you off, and now you can't enjoy that quality of life anymore.
Yeah, that is also a concern. I think more likely that's a concern. I'm not even going to try to put that away. I think that more common, because probably there's going to be some kind of either payment plan or some kind of agreement that, hey,
there will be a payment plan. 100%.
Well, more like some kind of a process that doesn't rely solely on how much money you can pay. There has to be, maybe you're a tester, maybe you're I don't know, maybe as an experimental thing, you're just a person that does the testing for it, or maybe you qualify for getting Neuralink and there's no monetary tie to you having it in your brain. I don't know. I think initially, I don't think the payment's going to be is the issue. I think it's more about the necessity for the patient themselves. However, in the future, yes, there's going to be that problem. We're thinking 3,000 years into the future. Ray Kurzweil, who I'm going to talk about, hopefully, if we have time, Ray Kurzweil thinks that we're going to experience, this singularity, which, by the way, his book Singularity is awesome. Among other books he wrote are very good. He thinks that we're going to have a singularity by like 2035, I think it is, which isn't that far away. He thinks we're going to reach AGI by 2029. AGI is artificial general intelligence. And if you don't know, Ray Kurzweil is a futurist. He's talked about things. He's a thought leader in the futurist, field. He's all over the internet. Look him up. I don't have a utopian vision like he does. He's very utopian about it. But it would be nice to know that Neuralink is going to be something that can help the extremely immobile and the people that are on the extreme versions of human limitations.
My fear is big pharma gets a hold of this. I mean, like, let's be honest. We are a chemical cocktail, most of which is produced by the brain. So for somebody who's bipolar or has an issue of chemical imbalance, what about a device in your brain that could stimulate different chemical productions? So now you're not taking a pill. You have a device that can just trigger your brain to make dopamine or things to make you feel better. But again, what if you don't pay for that? What would you do? Who would you rob just to maintain feeling good versus hearing voices in your head? What if the price of that begins to exceed your means? Just like a lot of things now, like food or gasoline. You know what I mean? Somebody else is setting this market. They have the ability to manipulate that market. You're going to have these peaks and valleys. You're going to have justifications as to why the price needs to go up. Again, it just seems like it's going to get into the hands of a lot of things that we have right now, where if you can't pay, oh, well, I guess you just die, or you don't have an enjoyable life, or, pensioners can't make enough pension to pay rent. Well, I guess you got to work until you're 107. Like, nobody's caring about that. So my concern is that this is all great, but we have a sociological problem. Humans are basically greedy, and we think about ourselves before we think about others. Until that changes, we cannot truly be responsible with technology like this, because we're irresponsible with things that aren't even at this level. So this is like a baby playing with matches. They don't know what they don't know, right? They don't know the potential danger. It seems like it's all fine and well until a house burns down. I could see this becoming a massive dumpster fire in the future because of the inequities we have on this planet. We don't fix the way we think, the way we treat each other, the way we operate as a civilization. This is like, Kardashev scale stuff. Only way we're going to get there is if we collectively work to get there. So yes, this is great. Yes, this will probably happen whether we like it or not. But I think we have a major ethical obligation, and everybody has an obligation to sort of educate themselves on these topics so they know what's what when these things start to become more prevalent, right? And we talked earlier about, making the human body a commodity, people willing to sell kidneys because they're impoverished, and that could be like 5 years worth of wages if you just sell your kidney. But what if we get to a point where we don't want another human kidney? We want a bionic kidney. We want a better kidney that doesn't necessarily have to come at the expense of somebody selling their kidney. So there could be a way of doing these type of things ethically. But just to touch another bit on Neuralink, I got a video clip here, just kind of diving into it a little bit further. So we'll check that out.
Elon Musk has created a company, has a company now called Neuralink. And it is the first chip that is designed to actually interface in the human brain, where neurons are actually interfacing with the chip to connect the human brain to the hard drive of a computer with no physical connection, with no wires. It's kind of like a Bluetooth.
Right.
Now,
your thoughts become manifest and operate.
Now, to a young person who has not been taught about their bodies, their relationship to their bodies, and how rare the human potential really is. When they hear that, they say, sweet, who wouldn't want to game without touching the keyboard? But Elon Musk himself, in an interview recently, this is fascinating. He said, as a businessman, I have to push the edge of this technology so that we can stay ahead of our competition. He said, but we need, not me specifically, our industry needs to be regulated. He says, I'm afraid. He's been saying this for years. Of where this is going. Yeah. So all of this is leading to, and it's a term you just mentioned, what is called the transhuman movement. And this is a new term. It means different things to different people. Technically, there are 3 levels of transhumanism. Transhumanism is, to varying degrees, replacing our natural biology with technology.
You are on mute, my friend. I'm going to disable your mute button.
You should disable it. Yeah, so there's a couple things. I have some allergy issues, so I'm trying not to make noise whenever I have the. So anyway, there's a couple things that I have an issue with this idea. The first issue is, people are like, oh, we have to be more in tune with our humanity, and we have to be more in tune with each other. And I don't know this guy's thoughts about his philosophy on civilization, society, and so forth. I don't know them, but generally, people who make this claim are the most anti-humanist, usually the most anti-humanist people I've ever seen with influence, just like Elon Musk. Elon Musk is not a humanitarian. And I understand that I was fooled by Elon Musk. He built the electric car, the Tesla. He freaking built, he bought SpaceX. He helped design, with a team of engineers, these rockets that can land themselves that NASA can't even do. Like, he's done a lot of great things. Him, of course, and a freaking army of engineers and scientists. There's a lot of great things that he's contributed to the world with, but he is a terrible human being. And you have to ask yourself, let's look at this from a very logical, take a step back. I really liked Elon. Just to be clear, I used to get mad at people who talked bad about Elon Musk. I mean, literally, like, what's wrong with you? He's trying to help humanity. He is not. Let's take a step back real quick. Right now, OpenAI is one of the leading artificial intelligence companies in the world. There's no one else that's doing what OpenAI is doing. And I'm going to try not to get too, technical and stuff like this, but long story short, you got ChatGPT 3, which essentially can help you with a lot of things for free. Most other AIs are barely ChatGPT 3 level, and they cost money. ChatGPT 3 is free. Okay, free. It doesn't cost you $1. ChatGPT 4 costs money because the cost of like maintaining it is extremely high. But essentially, OpenAI democratized artificial intelligence for the entire world that has access to the internet, of course. Okay, democratized it. Elon Musk is trying to obliterate and ruin OpenAI. Why? Because Grok sucks. Grok, and because there's a feud between him and Sam Altman, of course, a very petty, petulant man. Not Sam. Elon is very petty and petulant. He filed a lawsuit against Sam Altman, and just as a gesture of like, look what I'm gonna do to you, and then ended the lawsuit with okay, change your name to Close AI, and I'll drop the lawsuit. Petty, petulant man. Like, you can't get any more. We're talking about the future of humanity being affected by these companies. Why are you doing this? What is the point of what is the gesture here? He bought Twitter because people were roasting him on Twitter, and he didn't like that. So he bought it. Then regretted his decision and tried to get out of the deal, and now he's running it into the ground under the guise of freedom of speech, which he's not, because he canceled the Don Lemon interview because he didn't like the speech that was being given in that interview. Mm-hmm. He is not what he appears to be, guys and gals. Please just pay attention to who this guy is. My frustration is that these people who are like, oh, yeah, it's going to destroy us all. They're focusing on the technologies that are helping us, not the ones that could hurt us. They're not talking about the ones that could hurt us. They're focusing on the ones that could help us, like OpenAI, for example, like Microsoft, who's working on a lot of applications for the general public. That's what they're focusing on, and that's my concern. Imagine if, for example, there would be we're all struggling for money. Okay, we're all struggling to stay alive. We're all working a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 9 for some of us, just to stay alive, not even to thrive for the most part, just to live. Imagine if you can work a 9 to 11, and I mean 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., 3 days a week, and that's all you need to make the same amount of money you're making now. But that's all you have to work, because AI and other technologies have essentially coalesced in a way that frees humanity to be able to do exactly what that man was just talking about. Experience just being human, having the human connection, spending time with your family, exploring things, doing things. Because now you're not spending a third of your life working and the other third of it sleeping and the rest of it trying to figure out how to maintain the first two. Like, You know, like imagine that. That's the future that these people are trying to get to. And you got men who are claiming that, and women who are claiming, oh, you know, these are the things that are going to hurt us. These are the things that will literally help us. And that's what they focus on. My frustration is with that. I hate that so much because there are dangers, but we're not focusing on the dangers. We're focusing on the ones that are trying to help us. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Yeah, and basically it's what I was saying earlier of who gets to decide. You mentioned characters like Elon Musk. These are the guys putting forth the money. So we're literally letting them become the MC of the party, even though they are trivial, petty people. Like that's not, these need to be people that are dedicated to helping humanity, not necessarily. I get it. If there's no money, the board of directors isn't going to vote in favor of doing these projects. It has to be profit driven. So it's never going to be a truly altruistic thing. There's always going to be some corporate, you know, influence. It's got to be a profit here. It's got to justify the means. Like you said, ChatGPT 4 charges because, well, there's a little more maintenance. Well, what if at some point Neuralink's like, hey, we need to spend $9 trillion to really expand this. So everybody who has this is going to have to pay a little more because that's just the cost of maintaining this type of a luxury. It's very easy to come up with excuses and reasons why you need to pay more or do
Grok's
more
not free.
or be.
Grok's not free.
What's that?
Grok, his AI is not free.
Yeah.
So, I mean, come on, man. Twitter has a Twitter Blue. He's essentially put a paywall behind certain features on Twitter. That's not free.
Yeah.
So it's very hypocritical, in my opinion, to your point.
I totally agree. And you know, outside of things like Neuralink that maybe could help somebody with neurological disorders or help people control things with their mind, paraplegics, things like that, there's also this move of enhancing humanity, expanding our lifespan, bettering our organs, things like that. And there's something called the 2045 initiative, which is what, 21 years from now. So let's check this out to see what 2045 some people think is going to be like.
Have you heard about the 2045 Initiative, a non-profit organization with hopes of extending the human lifespan using artificial intelligence? Started by Russian billionaire Dmitry Iskov. He claims he can make all humans immortal. They have 4 major milestones in their plan. Number 1 was to create a remote control avatar. 2 was to ensure that the human brain could be transferred into that avatar at the time of a person's death. Number 3 was to ensure that consciousness and personality could be uploaded to the avatar at the time of a person's death. Number 4 gets rid of the physical body. They hope the human race can live on in holographic form. This is getting sci-fi. If you've seen Black Mirror, you've seen them experiment with the idea of holographic consciousness. The 2045 initiative calls this idea cybernetic immortality. Billionaires like Jeff Bezos have funded similar ideas. Artificial humanoid avatars, brain-computer interfaces. What do you guys think about immortal life? Do you think that could help us get to the 5D?
Okay, guys, listen.
You mentioned this earlier, uploading memories and, you know, essentially living forever, being able to capture experiences, thoughts, interact with loved ones long after their past, deceased children. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know where
I'm This is another topic I salivate over. All right. So there's a couple of, I'm going to go sci-fi here just to give some kind of reference to what we're talking about. Avatar, the movie. One of my favorite movies, by the way, a beautiful video game where you can literally be a Na'vi, which is the alien race that's on this planet, Pandora. But in the movie, long story short, humans have found a planet in the future where it's a very lush and vibrant planet full of like fauna, flora. Like it's beautiful. But they find this material the material on this planet that they can use, that the humans need on Earth to use, because we've essentially screwed things up there. So we're stealing it from them. But it is the life force of the planet itself by these giant trees in this planet. So their consciousness connects to this tree. Their consciousness through these fibers that are like external nerves that can connect their consciousness to the tree and other animals and so forth. And humans find a way to biologically engineer through extracting DNA from the Na'vi, which is the native alien race on Pandora, and then mixing it with human DNA so that they can transfer their consciousness into these avatars. Hence the movie's name, Avatar. And what they've done is they've tried to integrate themselves into the Navi's civilization to trick them into giving them this resource, essentially. And that's not to kind of go into the lore, but that's kind of an idea of an avatar. Now, the main character, spoiler alert, I'll give you a moment if you haven't seen it. Skip the next 10 seconds. The main character dies at the end, and he transfers his consciousness into the avatar's body and lives on as a Navi. Okay, spoiler alert over. For those who want to watch it and not be spoiled with it. Cool idea. Freaking awesome idea. However, I don't think that's possible. Let's talk about the reality. There's another movie called Gamer, and it's about a future civilization where human beings have essentially used other human beings as avatars for themselves because they're so poor that the only way they can survive in this world, in this future, this dystopian future, is by giving their bodies up to people that have money to be their avatars and interact in a sim-like environment. Now, Sims is a video game where you essentially simulate real life human beings. You get a job, you build a city, whatever. So that's what that movie's about. That, in my opinion, is probably more likely, to be totally honest. We're more likely to have, if we're going to go into the dystopian idea of it, it's probably going to be where rich people are using poor people as their avatars to do insanely terrible things. I'm not going to give it away, but if you want to know what I'm talking about, there are two movies I mentioned. There's Avatar, and then there's a movie called Gamer. Okay? You'll see what I'm talking about. Terrible.
I think
Gamer's
the
terrible.
scariest part is, the potential for mass controlling of people. If the bulk of the population have chips in their brains, you could essentially get acceptance to any new idea you have just by mind control. This is like MK Ultra in a chip in your brain. You no longer have free will. And you and I would argue that there is no free will, and I say there is, and that's a whole other topic. But essentially, you could mechanically manipulate somebody's desire, remove any sort of ethical boundaries they would have and make them do whatever you want. So even if you're not sort of living through the body of a sacrificial donor, even if you're just controlling these people like lemmings to do what you want, it's just as nefarious one way or the other, right? And I mean, it's not all, the brain. I mean, we're looking at a future that could look like this, right? People that are missing limbs that have bionic. I mean, there are potential. This guy's using the nerves on the one side of his body to control a bionic arm. So he has both limbs. Great. But what this is showing is that he, through movement, could essentially manipulate a robot. He could go like this and make a robot, fight another robot. It's like he could control a robotic avatar just using his body as the controller. And meanwhile, that is having an effect with some other mechanical device. So there's varying levels of this, varying levels of complexity with all this.
Right.
But
so Facebook and, by the way, Facebook and Google are working on technologies that are more tactile, and so they're working on technologies. I should say Meta, sorry, technologies that instead of putting something in your head, these technologies are using artificial intelligence can essentially predict intuitively what you want based off of subtle movements on the skin, and subtle electrical signals that under the skin, but only on the like from external devices. So like putting a ring on that can sense internal stimulation into your body and then do things or whatever. So you don't need to put something in your head. I see absolutely no need to put anything in your head unless you are the extreme, like a quadriplegic, something like that. Other than that, I don't see the need. I don't see that.
Well, look at smartwatches. There's so much information they can glean, right? Your biometrics, your heart rate. They can even sense your hydration levels through perspiration.
Elevation. Yep.
In Germany, certain models of Mercedes have sweat gland sensors in the steering wheel. They can detect if you are at the intoxicated level, and if your blood alcohol is above a certain percentage, the car doesn't start because it knows you're legally intoxicated and cannot operate the car. So again, there's varying levels of this. Some of this could be very beneficial, could save lives. And like anything, it could be used for nefarious purposes, right? And I think the biggest issue as a society, we are sick We let certain people, I shouldn't say we let certain people like Elon. We don't have a choice. He just has that freedom because he has the money. So society is set up in such a way that you can go rogue if you have the cash to do so, and nobody can stop you because nobody wants to get into litigation with you. There really is no policing of this. There is no global set of rules. And, going back to the video we watched a little while ago, the gentleman said even Elon agrees there needs to be some kind of regulation on this because it can go crazy. And with regulation also comes intellectual property protection, right? So there are some benefits to him too to have this become a regulated thing. But once it becomes regulated, it's now standardized. It can then spread like crazy. So although it may come across as the verbiage of, hey, for our own safety, we should regulate it, there's probably benefits to him from regulation that we're not even seeing because we're not thinking like he has the 10,000 foot view. We have the 5-inch view. So there's a lot more that he would gain from that type of thing as well. It may not always be for the benefit of the technology, right? But I want to show you some modular body parts. This is very cool. And I'll get your thoughts in a minute here, Marquise.
We're looking at Oscar, the first human modular prototype that is able to live in various setups. What's going to happen is that I'm going to connect the brain to the heart module to activate the blood circulation. Now, the lung is going to start breathing. You can see both organs are now collaborating. I can add a kidney module. And if I add a limb module, it starts actuating the organism to move. Now it's looking for the optimal temperature, which is 37 degrees. If I add another limb, Oscar will recognize it and beneficiate from new possibilities.
That thing is thinking, breathing, moving, making decisions. It is a sentient creature, basically, totally mechanical, made from biological tissue, but not part of a human being. So what do you think about that, man?
That's I'm weirded out, right? That's creepy, dude. So, okay, so a couple things. Boston Dynamics is I defer. So I'm going to do two things here. First of all, Boston Dynamics has shown that's imagine if Boston Dynamics implemented that technology into their robotic technology, and now you got like a real android looking, human looking, decision making, like world interacting. I'm not okay with that. That's weird and creepy. They're gonna have to show me a better demo than that, because that's amazing, but like in a terrifying way. Yeah. I want to mention something too, by the way, because I once saw this documentary that talked about smart homes and how, and I don't think this will ever be a democratized thing. I don't think this will ever be. It's possible now, but like you got to be rich to have this. Where like,
oh, your audio is gone. Your audio's good now.
And there was this AI that essentially was always watching everything in the home. And when this person walked into the home, the AI saw through cameras, saw this person's eyes, detected that there was an issue with their diabetes, that they needed to take their insulin. They detected how much they needed to take by telling the person to go to the toilet, and they urinated. They could sample the urination, tell them what exactly they needed to do, administer the dosage through the internet in their home on a device on their arm that injects the insulin into their arm. All this was done by the person walking into the home. They didn't have to think about it. It just happened. And the AI was like, hey, your insulin is whatever. Go ahead and use the bathroom, and then we can determine how much what we can do for you. Goes to the bathroom, boom, it's done. There are these machines that you can walk inside of, and they can essentially diagnose you with the medical condition. And then and then give you suggestions on a treatment. This is happening. This is something that's available today, by the way. This is available today.
Yeah, med beds, medical beds. Yeah,
med beds. We talked about that, I think, a little while back, but there's a lot to talk about with that med beds, which we haven't done a lot of research on that in the moment, to be able to present the totality of what those represent, but they are phenomenal. The idea that we can essentially use technology to diagnose us. I mean, there's an AI that can look at your eye and tell you whether or not you have certain medical conditions by observing blood vessels in your eye, and somehow it could determine that you have certain medical conditions. Amazing. But to your point, it's not democratized at all. This is not something that it wouldn't take much. It takes a couple minutes, but they're not everywhere. They're not all over the place. They're not there's not a kiosk, a medical bed kiosk at every hospital. I've never seen one.
Yeah.
So at least for the moment, they're not democratized. Now, when it comes to that creepy little video you showed, no.
What's wrong with the pink legless chicken crawling across the table?
That's what it looks like. What the heck? That's creepy, dude. No.
I'm going to play one more time. I want to see that one more time, because I literally saved that video clip, and that's the first time I watched it. So let's check this thing out one more time.
We're looking at Oscar, the first human modular prototype that is able to live in various setups. What's going to happen is that I'm going to connect the brain to the heart module to activate the blood circulation. Now,
you can see it.
The lung is going to start breathing. You can see both organs are now collaborating. I can add a kidney module. And if I add a limb module, it starts actuating the organism to move. Now it's looking for the optimum temperature, which is 37 degrees. If I add another limb, Oscar will recognize it and beneficiate from new possibilities.
That is going to go all wrong. It's going to go all wrong. It has to.
I have some movie references, but they are too disturbing to bring up.
Yeah.
They're very disturbing. Okay, so let's just talk about that creepy little Oscar thing. So Oscar is creepy. Amazing. I don't know why. First of all, why do they do that? What are you doing, dude? Like, what is the purpose of creating a...
That's just Frankenstein in the modern day era. That's all.
Why though? What is the purpose of doing this? I can't imagine what they would. I can imagine an android that has internal organs that essentially function like human, like that, you know, that they have like these modular compartments you assemble, and then it does human-like behaviors and stuff like that. I can imagine that. I can't imagine why though. Like, why would you need to do that?
Well, maybe you could put a module in the brain that would it would tell your body and your sort of immune system not to reject that organ, so you wouldn't have to be on anti-rejection medication. Maybe it's like plug and play. You need a kidney, we've got a kidney. And a lot of this could come down to growing those parts out of your own tissues. Therefore, your body would not reject it because it's your DNA. It's your own organ. You've just grown an additional kidney to replace the bad kidney that is failing, and it doesn't require a donor or somebody else to sacrifice. It would be your own tissues. You got a hole in your heart. We could grow you a new heart with just some, basic DNA swabbing, a petri dish, 6 months worth of time. There is another brand new heart, same size, same everything, basically 3D printed out of your own flesh that could run with, and that little pacemaker thing connected to it, right? Like, that could be very good. It could also be horrific, because you could literally have some kind of cyborg that you blow its arm off and it just plugs another one in and it's good to go. Flesh and bone creature, able to think and breathe and replicate and reproduce. That it could go all bad.
So why, first of all, you should have been the guy to invent that, because if he would have presented that, I'd have been like, wow, that's cool. That's not what he did. No. What he did was, look at this creepy little, this creepy little,
it's like a chicken with no feathers.
It's like, and he's like, it looks like Oscar looks like he's suffering, and
Oscar doesn't know he's suffering. That's the scary part. What if that was a human
Pugs-
being made up of
pugs
all
don't
Oscar
know.
parts?
Pugs don't know they're suffering.
Yeah.
But for some reason, people have cruelly made them. That's what I think about when I think about Oscar.
Yeah.
Okay, I think about pugs. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do what you just said. Okay, why don't you write them an email and say, hey, stop torturing Oscar. Create organs, please.
But here's the ethical implications. Is Oscar real? Could you slaughter Oscar? Would that be murder? It's real human tissue, but is it a human being? That goes right back to the beginning of this show. What does it mean to be human? Does it just the parts we came with, unmodified? Is it a human with a bionic heart? Because there's a difference, but if you need something because you're dying, or if you want something to be enhanced to be better than somebody else. Can I win a gold medal because I can swim harder, faster, run longer, because I have a better heart? I have, organs able to convert more oxygen in my system. Is that now fair? What does it mean to be human? We're having this debate right now in the transgendered world. Should transgendered athletes be able to compete with the other gender? People are saying, well, it depends when the hormone therapy was administered. And in some cases, it's not a benefit. But if you look at foot or hand size in swimming, even if you are on female hormones, you still have the larger feet and hands, which gives you a benefit. That won't change just because you're going on hormone therapy. It's a very complicated topic. There's many opinions, many biases. But again, this all goes back to that question. What is a Homo sapien sapien? Is it just a base DNA? Is it anything outside of how we were 200,000 years ago? Is that an abolition? Like we're not allowed to do that? Or what is ethical? What is not ethical? There's no right or wrong answer to this, but these are the type of things we have to think about, because every time we move the line, somebody's trying to reestablish a new line. And then even if we accept it, the ceiling raises, then there's another line. So where do we draw the line, I guess, is the big question. And if we're not aware of any of this stuff, it's happening in the dark. And don't think that other countries aren't already doing nefarious things with this technology. We'd be ignorant to think that, oh, this just that guy with Oscar. I'm sure there's 100 variations of Oscar. I'm sure there are full-grown people, clones, modified with these kind of weird organs, interchangeable organs. If somebody gets killed on the battlefield and I lost an arm, can I take his arm and now I'm good to go? I mean, this is literally but this is what the next 100 to 1,000 years is going to look like. We will be faced with these questions ethically, morally. Our kids and their kids are going to have to really give this some thought, because Pandora's box is open. This is already happening.
So we may be pontificating about the philosophical implications of what it means to be human in relation to transhumanism. But I will say that it is that pontification that sets the stage for what eventually will become, again, to your point, our future. If we don't have these conversations, then somebody else is going to decide this for us. And you said that earlier, and I agree with you 100%. I think that you presented a really difficult, at the very tail end of this conversation of our show today, you asked a question that is an entire episode in and of itself. What does it mean to be human? That's a whole episode.
Yeah.
I just want to say something about that. So I get frustrated with people who say, and it's not necessarily a person, it's a comment. They say, oh, there really is no difference between us and like animals. There really is no difference between us and nature and trees, because we're all connected. We are, by the way, all connected. However, there are clear differences between all living creatures. It doesn't matter what creature. There are clear differences. If we were to think in terms of how we conduct ourselves, that there are no differences between us and other things, we would die. Because you need to have that understanding of difference to survive. We talked about this with Deb, right? With Debs, where it's like, you don't walk into a lion's den like, we're all one. And because you're going to get eaten by the lions. They're going to eat you. You don't walk up to an elephant and say, we're all one. It's going to trample you, especially if its children are around. Like, within reason, the statement we are one there are levels to that statement. On one level, on the very base level, everything is subatomic particles, bouncing just in space, all connected in some way, right?
Entanglement.
There's no entanglement. There's a quantum entanglement at the base level of reality, at least as far as we've theorized. So it's like, yes, there are atoms, and the density of atoms are what determines the difference between all things, but technically we're all the same. But like, if you were to sit here and act upon that, you would wither away and die, because you have to walk around things, and you have to interact with things in your environment, and you have to eat and sleep. Like, it's ridiculous to think that you can think that on all levels, because that's nonsensical. So what does it mean to be human? I have no idea, but I know it's different. I know it's unique. I know it's different. We have the ability to influence literally all things in existence, whether it be on this planet or somewhere else. Like, nothing else is doing that. Nothing else that we can observe and present as proof of evidence is doing that, except for potentially non-human intelligences. So basically, my point is that I think that what it means to be human, that's a difficult question to answer with what we have left today. But I think it's a great setup for what we're going to talk about next time. So
yeah. And go one step further. What does it mean to be human? And what does it mean to be sentient or conscious? Because if you believe something exists after you die, you've shedded your physical humanity, but you are still a being. So are we humans living a spiritual, existence, or are we spiritual beings stuck in a human body? Does the body make us human, or does the consciousness of understanding that we have choices and we were created, is that what actually is the essence of humanity, the part that continues on, that came before us and will come after us? Does the body even matter? We could go deep as we want.
I want to talk about one more thing real quick, just because I don't know if we're what does it look like to believe that we are one? What is a manifestation of that belief, of that thinking? I think that is a really important question that we should be talking about. Let me just give you an idea, at least from my perspective, of what it looks like. We talked about on Deb's. I really missed it. That was a great. On Deb's show, we talked about what does it mean. We talked about this idea, but what I think it means is it like Siddhartha, right? When he was sitting, he saw how the poor were versus his very wealthy family was. It did something to him. It bothered him so much so that he gave up his entire wealth and lifestyle to engage with suffering in his belief that we are all one, right? To ultimately discover, nirvana or enlightenment, to achieve enlightenment. What would that look like? Did it look like ignoring the plight of others, or embracing and engaging the suffering that we all experience? I believe that until we do that, what Siddhartha did, what Gautama Buddha talks about, what Jesus talks about, until we do what these great philosophers, have talked about, these great teachers, these religious people, if we don't do what they say in terms of the idea of connectedness, of oneness, of life after death, if you want to believe these things, you need to know what it means manifestly, what it means to believe them. It means to engage with that connectedness, that thing that connects us all. And it is, I believe, and this is according to the texts, to the people, the men and women that have existed, it is to engage with the suffering and plight of all humankind, and to recognize, not to ignore because you don't want to be sad. That's not what Buddha did. That's not what Jesus did. We'll talk about this in more depth in another episode. They engaged the suffering. They literally dove right into it. They didn't run away from it. They told us to embrace it, to face it, to give up the luxuries that we experience in this life. Because only when we do that will we recognize our connectedness. So what does it look like? What is a manifestation of that belief? There are plenty of examples. And it's not the new, enlightenment where you ignore the suffering of others. It's where you embrace it.
Yeah. Very well said. And we'll talk about these concepts more in a future episode. So thank you everybody for joining us today. It was a fantastic episode. We love your feedback. So leave us your comments in the comment section. Give us a thumbs up if you like it. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. And with that, until next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, we'll call it a night. Thank you all for watching. Take care of each other, and we'll see you next week.